If we think about it, managing change is life. That's what we're doing.
The change formula. There's so many different aspects that this can apply to, whether it's us as business owners wanting to change what's going on inside of our company, inside of our personal life.
There is a simple formula. The change formula is D times V is greater than R. D is dissatisfaction. V is a vision, an unhappiness factor multiplied times a good idea about what you really want, have to combine to be greater than the resistance to change.
What are resistance to change?
Number one, in my experience, is
expert advice, practical tips, real-life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Martin, how are you?
hey, I'm doing well. A little tired, been getting up early in the morning.
Working
going to
out?
the gym. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good. Makes you tired. Man, I went to bed at 8:30 the other night, but I'd gotten up at about 4. Well, 4 is not that early, but anyway.
4 is not that early. Okay.
Well,
Well, you're going to bed at 8:30. It's not, but
you're not. Yeah, you're kind of like, oh, okay, now what am I? Anyway, that was kind of wondering, okay, what's going on here, man? Going to bed at 8:30, but at least it's
with
dark.
NFL's back on.
I
Now
know.
there's
Yeah.
football like 4 days a week, so it's hard for me to go to bed at 8:30. I'm watching football.
Yeah.
So we were talking before this, the change formula, and just how do we actually change? And there's so many different aspects that this can apply to, whether it's us as business owners wanting to change what's going on inside of our company, inside of our personal life. We have employees that we just want to help change, and we need something different out of them. And yeah, there's systems that we want to update or have a difference in, but we're going to talk about the change formula, and we can apply it to all these different areas. And this is something that you give talks on. It kind of it falls into one of your 2-hour workshops you do on how to change reality. But why don't let's start with just saying what the change formula is and walking through that,
Okay.
and we'll explain it.
Jump real quickly right ahead of that. If we think about it, managing change is life. That's what we're doing. It's
Change is
making
certain.
decisions, and the decisions affect the change, and that's where. Or you can choose not to affect the change and let it happen to you. But everything is change, and it's inevitable. Oh, I used to have a slide in one of my PowerPoint shows, and it had this lady in it. And she's kind of elderly and looked kind of mean. And the title on it said, I don't mind change just so long as I don't have to do anything different. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know where that slide is anymore. But the change, you're trying to affect change. And by that, I mean both affect and effect. You're trying to effect change and to have it come about. And you're trying to affect it to be what the change that you want, right?
Okay.
So there is a simple formula for the essentials of it, and the way I've described it, that you're answering your question, is the change formula is D times V is greater than R. And D is dissatisfaction. It's pain. It's the stick, if you talk about the carrot and the stick. It's something that you're unhappy with. You don't like, you don't want. V is a vision. That is something that you do want and idealized. But anyway, it's the pleasure, it's the carrot, it's something that you do want. So if you look at that, you say an unhappiness factor multiplied times a vision for what you want, a good idea about what you really want, have to combine to be greater than the resistance to change. And I love to ask groups, and so I'll ask you,
Ooh.
what are some reasons that people resist change?
What are resistance to change?
Yeah.
Well, I think just general comfort, right? Comfort
Okay.
with lifestyle, comfort with routine, comfort with how things are, stability. I think that's just in general. Other resistance, resistance to changing finances, resistance to changing behaviors. I don't know. What are some other good examples of
Well,
resistance?
I'm keeping going with you. What do you mean by resisting changing my financing? Why would somebody
So
resist
sticking
that?
to a budget, for example, because
Okay.
it's uncomfortable to stick to a budget, to say no to what you want, to delay gratification, um, and to follow the rules. Resistance to change with maybe a relationship. You're worried about what other people think. You're worried about what the other person thinks, even though you're not happy in a relationship. You stay in it for longer because you're worried that you'll be judged or whatever it is.
I think that you're saying specifically, not quite the same words they use, but what I hear most often when I ask people, what are reasons people resist change?
Fear.
And yeah, there you go. Number one, in my experience, is fear.
Okay.
Number two, I've just created this big all encompassing word, but it's inertia, right?
Okay.
I've been, look, I go to work every day. I got my schedule figured out. We're in a quote sweet spot, as somebody I know says that a lot. We're in a sweet
Mm.
spot. I go, well, we need to break out of that sweet spot because it's not going to be so sweet tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two main things. And the things that you mentioned, I think almost all of them fall underneath those. Inertia is comfortable, right?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable. I'm willing to change. I absolutely am willing to change, but not today. I'll change tomorrow because I'm busy today. And of course, tomorrow
That kind of
never
brings
comes.
up what we were talking about earlier. Like right now we're in September 2024, elections 2 months from yesterday. And people are like, it's election year. We're going to go ahead and wait. And you just sit in a stalemate for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We were talking about that. Almost did an episode on it. I've heard a lot in the last, really a month, but a lot in particular the last 2 weeks, people saying, I'm going to wait until after the elections to do something they need to do. That, in my opinion, and we talk about it, we need to do it. But it's a scary something. So
Yeah.
they're going to wait. I said, well, what are we waiting for?
You're going to wake up on November 6th and be like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
what? Yeah, well, if one of these clowns that's running gets in, what's going to be different than the other? Well, probably something different, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And
You can't
he said,
control it.
well, but there's clear uncertainty out there. That's almost an oxymoron, right? That we can't know. There's this event. And I said, those events are pending at all times. You just
Always.
didn't know about most of them. And can you think of one? I actually took me a while to think of it. And then I go, duh. An event that happened that was dramatically changed everything. And we knew nothing about it a month before
COVID.
it happened. COVID. And it's
Yeah.
Ukraine. It's nothing
Yeah.
compared to COVID, but it disrupted fuel and all that in Europe, and grain prices soared. And what did it have an effect out here in the U.S., the contractor?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did it? So, yeah, that fear of change manifests itself in that and just hesitation.
Yeah.
When we do talk about fear, because people do, so fear and inertia, the main two reasons, I like to ask people what they're scared of.
Okay. So what am I scared of? Scared of loss, like losing family members.
Okay.
Scared of like losing my house or, losing money. In
Okay.
general, I'm scared of loss, I would say. I think I
I mean, I think,
have a healthy fear of like reputation, like what other people think about me. I think that matters to a certain degree. I think sometimes when I'm unhealthy, it's like I care too much about what people think about me rather than just being myself and doing what I need to do. But I think that's probably up there with a fear I have.
well, you And that keeps you from change? I mean,
Sometimes.
that's one of the fears that would affect change?
Sure.
Okay. Well, with regard to that, you played right into my hands with a quote that I use often that Stephen Covey said, the 16-40-60 rule. Your fear of what people think about you and your reputation and what are they going to think. And also, if I go broke, everybody's going to know it. If I
Yeah.
have, bankrupt, if I have to sell my house, everybody's going to know it. That's
Yeah.
scarier than knowing that I'm going to get another job and get another house. But Stephen Covey has the 16-40-60 rule. Have you heard that before?
16 or 60s 60?
No, 16
Okay.
40 60 16-40-60.
I'm trying to add it up to 100 and that's not adding up.
No, well, you're going at it too hard. When you're 16, you care what everybody thinks about you.
Oh, it's about age. Okay.
Yeah. When you're 40, you don't give a damn what people think about you. And when you're 60, you finally realize nobody's ever been thinking about you.
Yeah. Just you.
Right. So what you brought up is a classic. Fear of failure is the way people describe it a lot. Come up with
Yep.
I'll lose my house, I'll lose my money, I'll lose my reputation. Those kind of things, when you look at them in the face and say, is that really going to happen? If you lost this job, could you never get another job? Well, of course I can. I don't know what it'd be, but of course I can. If you lost money, can you not ever get any more money again? If you go broke as a contractor and you did it honestly, right, will you not have learned a whole bunch of things that if you start another company, you'll avoid those mistakes because you've
Yeah.
lived them, your judgment? So we start but challenging the fears, right? Now, you mentioned some in there that are very real. If you lose family members, things like that, pretty tough stuff. But that's not something that typically you're going to result. Well, what would you be changing that would cause that to happen? But
Yeah.
so the other one is the inertia, right? And that's comfortable. And I get it, man. I like being comfortable. I mean,
Most people do.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the idea. Well, there really are some people that if they're comfortable, they're going crazy. They're going to go break something, right?
Sure.
Because you can't stand it. But yeah, that's how it's defined. But if you take those two, if you take a severe liking of being comfortable and a serious fear of what could go wrong, or a serious reluctance to put out the effort of what could go wrong, I say to you, you will not change.
Hmm.
Not going to happen. And it applies to us, we owners and managers that are listening to this. It applies to the guys who work for you, guys and gals who work for you. If they don't have something they want, if they don't have something they're unhappy with, they're not going to come to work to earn money. They have to be motivated to do that. At the very bottom level is you don't want to starve, you got the house payment. So they'll come work for minimum wage. You need to give them more than somebody else comes along and gives them more than that scratches an itch, either
Yeah.
alleviates a fear, which basically is what a raise is supposed to do, right? And give you more money and help alleviate some of those fears, or promise you a future or a culture of people that you like to hang with, that you're learning, you're growing, your company's honest, you're respected, that gives you a vision for, hey, I'm a good person and that's what I wanted to always be. This company affords me that. If a company comes along and you're not doing those things, and a company comes along and is doing those things, paying attention to the D and the V, they will win those clients or those employees away from you. And now that we're talking, I'll give you an example from a guy who was in a workshop here a week ago Wednesday, and he's a flooring contractor, and he will hear this because he said he listens to everything. So hello, Mike. Anyway, he's a flooring contractor. Maybe that's his name. Maybe I was just talking to this microphone. That's his name. He won't mind. But he was saying, man, he's kind of having trouble hiring people. So we started talking, and he said, yeah, he put out an ad. And I said, read me the ad. which he did, not to insult him, but I don't remember it exactly, but it's pretty white bread, right? It was like floor skilled installers required, must know how to do this, must know
Yeah.
how to do that. $35 an hour, must have your own transportation, speaking, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Must, gotta.
Got it.
Well, anyway, we were just talking, and he said, first, he said, I used to be, oh, I know what it was. I said, are your guys W-2s or contractors? He
Yeah.
said, they're all W-2s. I said, why? I mean, there are lots of reasons why. That's why I said, because Mike said this, I used to be a contractor, 1099, and I might get paid 30 days later, 45 days later. I had to pay my own taxes. And he said, so what I've done is I've made everybody W-2. I pay them every Thursday. We have benefits. And I have a program that was written by a guy that you and I know, Will Blake, where they can earn bonuses that are paid every other Thursday. And I said, my God, man, put that in your ad. That's the V, right?
Right.
That guy's reading it, and he knew all the D times V. So he's just now doing that. I don't know the effects, but if you're in that market of labor and you get paid every Thursday, and you can tell your wife or your spouse, I get paid every Thursday. I have a chance to make a bonus. They pay my taxes. I get a W-2, which means that I might be able to get a loan to buy a house instead of being a contractor. Holy cow, my life could change.
Yeah.
That was a guy using D times V to effect EFF, to bring about a change, which is getting people who are working somewhere else to change over and start working for him. Right. So
Yeah.
without that, without a D and a V, and understand what it is, it's their D and a V, but you got to identify it. Without that, what the hell? You're just another guy. That's what we already got, $30 an hour. So
Yeah.
anyway,
No, that's so you have to paint the picture of what the V is, and you have to have a really good understanding of what the dissatisfaction is. Dissatisfaction, vision, and then you have the resistance, which is either fear or inertia. I think do you notice with people that once they start affecting change that it kind of the inertia goes the other way, they kind of catch momentum and it just changes keeps coming and keeps rolling and it get better and better and better?
Don't see it all the time, but certainly do see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
It's a learned skill. I mean, learned habit. And th- this may be not exactly where you were going, but literally D times V is the sales formula, right? So if you are thinking when you're approaching somebody who, a potential client, a lead, and you go in with the idea in your head that I need to find out what they're unhappy with clearly, and I need to understand what they want going forward clearly, and that's your goal, you will become a better and better and better salesperson to bring about more and more change. Now, that may not be the way you were thinking when you asked that question. But
No, I think it does apply to sales in a great way. What I'm thinking of is momentum's a real thing. Like you think about whenever you're in a car, right? Well, going from 0 to 20 in 2 seconds can feel like a jolt, right? But if you're on an airplane going, 380 miles an hour and you go up to 400 miles an hour, you may not even notice because you've already
depends on
got
how
that.
fast.
Sure,
Yeah.
it depends on how fast, right?
How
But
quickly they did it.
you feel that 0 to 1 really hard, and that's where the inertia is the hardest, right? And
Absolutely.
if you start the process of change, and you if you're talking about going to the gym, you pick up the first weights, right? It's going to be difficult. You go for the first week, it's a challenge. For the first 2 weeks, it's a challenge. But then slowly but surely it becomes you gain momentum. Your body's used to waking up early and getting into the gym and becomes a routine and a habit, and you're able to affect change long term because you have momentum at your back, right? Same thing with anything else. You're going to face that inertia, but if you can fight through it, maybe you'll catch some momentum in developing that change.
There is a well-known saying amongst salespeople. I
Yeah.
did not come up with it, but I believe it. And it's a question. When's the best time to sell something?
Yesterday.
Well, that's true on the tree thing. Immediately after you sold something, because your confidence level is up, right? So you keep it going. If you take a break after every time you sell something and let it kind of dip back down and lose
Yeah.
contact with it, but on a roll, however you want to describe it. So, yeah, keeping after it. And I think there's simply, when somebody has never significantly changed and then they do, for whatever reason, they hit the point where I'm not putting up with this anymore. A lot of people never do hit that point, but when you do hit that point and you do bring about a change and your life, you see, it didn't kill you. You didn't go broke, didn't get divorced.
Yeah.
All the bad things that you thought could happen didn't happen. Life got a little better. You feel a little more proud about yourself because you're not just taking it. You're out there, bringing things about. Yeah, it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Can become a habit,
Yeah.
and it's truly beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think about change, and another thing I think about is environment and the importance of the environment around you being maybe a piece of inertia in changing. And I think for me, if I'm struggling, like I had a difficult summer and it was really hard for me to be in the office working for some
Yeah,
reason. Like it just didn't help me. But if I went to a coffee shop and I put headphones in, I could really focus. And just having that different environment that was a little bit more vibrant and awake and alive rather than just me in my solo office, it helped me just kind of get going. And I think in many cases, your environment can impact the feelings that you have and that uh, the resistance that you feel can be
right.
based upon the environment you're in. Maybe there's terrible coworkers with you and you need to change environments so that you can go and work at this other place and maybe feel better about yourself and have more positive energy around you. So anyways, another thing to think
That
about.
definitely is one of the principles in how to change reality. And I like to use the news services or television, cable news, whether
Yeah.
it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC. You go home and you watch that, whichever one you watch. And if you're like me, your veins are bugging out in your neck within, 20 minutes about things that you have absolutely no control over, have no influence over, except maybe to go vote or
Yeah.
convince a coworker to vote the way you do, something like that. But in the meantime, your blood pressure went up 30 points. You're going to blow a fuse. And so that's one of the things about environment is sometimes you need to get to change your environment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Identify what's doing that to you and bringing you negative and get away from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, change formula. So we can apply this to ourselves as business owners. If we don't like something in our business, we can look at, okay, what do we not like about this and where does it need to go? What's the vision for this? And then we can see what our resistance to that is, I guess. I mean, how would you have
Well,
a business owner apply it?
a business owner just needs to understand about him or herself. If they're not unhappy about something and or if they do not really want something, they are not going to change. I had a client for 1 month. I went to his office and he hadn't been in there very much. Literally, there was a snow angel in the dust on his desk right in front of him. But the rest, he had people running his business. He did everything that we talk about. He made a lot of money. He had an airplane. His wife paid $500,000 literally to work for him. Just that's how they got. He just had all this stuff. And so I get in there, start talking to him about systems and creating a future and having a vision and all this. And so I went to my second, and he paid me. He paid me couple $1,000 to come. So we go to that meeting. I come back to the SEC meeting and he goes, Martin, he said, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. He goes, I appreciate you coming in here. He says, that's really interesting. I'm not going to do any of that. He didn't have a single reason to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
if a guy is prudent, he might go, what's going to happen to my business if in a year something changes? I could be regretting it. But where he wasn't worried about anything. He had his airplane, had his house somewhere like Palm Springs, or he went out there all the time, played golf, and goes, I'm not going to do all that stuff. I go, okay, thanks. So business owners, I guess the biggest thing is, it's not my role as a coach to talk people into feeling bad about something, or it is to help them draw out and articulate a vision.
Mhm.
But I can't create it for them. If they really are not unhappy with something, and if they really don't want something, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're not. So as a coach, that's kind of my role is, well, you don't have to put up with this forever. And, this terrible thing or whatever it is, or stress. We talk about, less stress, more free time, more money. That's really possible. And let's say you sit back and go, you really think that's possible? Say, well, I know it is. I said, well, in that case, that's my new vision. And now they're fired up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So that's an
that's a great perspective on the employees as well. You want your employees to change,
exactly.
but if they don't want it, you're not going to affect change. They have to want it
Right.
themselves, and they have to have a vision of what things could look like. And
Right.
that's kind of just like you have a responsibility with business owners to help them understand what their vision is and to help them, stoke the fire of that vision and help them affect change. Same thing with employers, business owners, and their employees. You need to be aware of what your employees' visions for their lives are, for their role in your company, for their careers, and help them see that vision clearly so that they can affect change. They can continue to grow and develop.
There's a book out there, I can't remember, called Dream Manager or something like that. But when you get a company of a certain size, and it can be the owner if that's
Sure.
the owner's natural bent, but to try to understand literally what the goals are for the people who work for you.
Yeah.
In writing, same way I would do it as a coach, and then help them to get those goals. And it's a fantastic way to build allegiance to the company, because it's real and you care.
Yeah.
And the last one, you didn't mention it yet, but the other D times V is sales when we talked about it.
Okay.
The customer is not going to change their money from their pocket to yours without a D times a V and evidence that you understand what theirs are.
Yeah. No, that's good. Okay. So the change formula, dissatisfaction multiplied by vision for what it could be, has to be greater than resistance to that. And the resistance is your fears or the inertia of being comfortable, of feeling good where you're at, whatever that means to you. So, okay. Well, I think that's a valuable thing to know. I think it's a really good lesson for people to just have in the back of their mind when they're thinking about, man, I wish this person would change, or I wish things looked differently. Oh, well, let me go back to the formula and come up with my case for
Let me
why they
throw
should change.
one last thing in there because it pertains to sales really. But I've got a call with a guy in Australia here next week. But people sometimes just contact me through the website.
Yeah.
And I've got, I try to research them, maybe if they got a website, stuff like that. But mostly when they call me up, I'm never worried. Like, oh my gosh, I got to sell this guy. I got to try to get this guy to be a client. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Directly. All I know is I need to keep asking questions about what's bothering him and what's he want or she.
Yeah.
That's all I got to do. And if I do that well enough to, on a piece of paper, write down 5 of each of those things during our conversation, I will have listened. And it's kind of a gimmick, but it's not really. And then when we're through, I'm saying, so what I'm hearing is read them back.
Yeah.
And I go, oh my God, when do we start?
Sells itself.
How did you know that? Because you just told me. Right?
Yeah.
So D times B, if you have that in your mind when you're selling things, sometimes there are little hurdles you got to gimmick over, like what's the first thing you say on the phone,
Sure.
But just after that, you're just trying to find out what they're unhappy about and what they like. Just figure that out and you got it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the change formula is something that inspires listeners. They can think about things more clearly. Maybe it helps them with their sales process, managing employees, or even a personal situation. But yeah, thanks for sharing, Martin. I've always liked the change formula, so good to go through that again.
It's pretty cool. Simplifies life.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. Thanks.
Okay, see you, man.
See you on the next one.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cash Flow Contractor. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Visit thecashflowcontractor.com. See you next episode.